Hello, and welcome to the Benchmarking Financial Metrics for Secondary Schools webinar, which is part of the School Resource Management series delivered by Entrust on behalf of the DFE. This is one of a series of entirely free short sessions that Entrust Support Services have developed in partnership with the DFE around the key areas of school resource management. Further information on the other webinars in the series is at the end of this presentation, as well as on our website, which is on the screen now. Details of last year's presentations can be found there too. My name is Bethany, and I will be your trainer for today. I work in the Educational Finance team at Entrust Support Services. Entrust are education specialists working with all phases of maintained schools and academies to provide them with financial assistance and advice. This session is specifically tailored to secondary schools, and we do have separate sessions for primary schools, and one specifically for special educational needs and alternative provision schools. We have also produced a resource pack that will go alongside this webinar. The resource pack contains full instructions for the various websites we'll be looking at throughout the presentation, so there is no need for anyone to take copious notes. Included in the pack will be some frequently asked questions you can refer back to, along with some useful internet links to the various sites and tools we'll be looking at today. Also in the resource pack is a thought leadership piece and an example of a best practice benchmarking report for you to download and refer to. Some of you may have already downloaded our resource pack, but if not, it is available on the website. We are going to start by having a refresher on benchmarking. I will also introduce the new updates to benchmarking, as there have been a couple since we last ran these sessions. I also want to ensure that those of you who are new to benchmarking are in a position to understand the rest of the webinar and are not left behind. After we've looked at the school's financial benchmarking website, we are then going to move on and have a look at VMFI, View My Financial Insights. Once we have seen the various benchmarking websites, we will then discuss how to utilise these results when discussing them with the leadership team at your school and when using them to make calculated decisions. As mentioned, to start with, we will have a refresher on benchmarking. We will start at the very beginning and have a dictionary definition of benchmarking. Benchmarking is the act of measuring the quality of something by comparing it with something else of an accepted standard. Specifically for schools, this means comparing a school's performance, both financially and otherwise, against other similar schools to see how the school compares. Once we have carried out benchmarking, the results can be used to make better operational and strategic decisions. Benchmarking can be undertaken by anyone, as the majority of the accessible information is in the public domain. However, everyone from administration assistants, office managers, school leaders, including governors and trustees, and school business professionals should use benchmarking specifically to make decisions on purchasing, the direction of the school, and also use the results to support budget modelling. Schools should always seek to achieve best value whilst making purchases, and benchmarking supports this commitment. Benchmarking should be carried out at least annually, and one of the DFE's returns does ask if the school has completed a benchmarking exercise. This is the School's Financial Value Standard, SFVS, for maintained schools, and the School Resource Management Self-Assessment Checklist for academies. Although benchmarking is an annual requirement, I do recommend that benchmarking should be used frequently throughout the year, and users should feel confident about navigating the site and using the results to inform decisions. To achieve the most out of a benchmarking exercise, good comparator schools need to be chosen. The DFE's benchmarking tools do allow schools to carry out a quick comparison to similar schools. This is based on some of the factors you can see on screen now, but this list is not exhaustive. Pupil numbers is a crucial factor and one that is commonly used whilst carrying out benchmarking. Government research has found that the percentage of children attracting free school meals is a particularly key factor in getting a good comparison school. In addition, if you are an urban school, you should avoid comparing yourselves to rural schools if possible, and vice versa. With regard to building size, it is an important factor when comparing premises costs, and one of the tools we'll look at later, View My Financial Insights, now produces a separate set of schools for specifically your premises costs to be compared with, depending on factors such as building size and age. Interestingly though, geography is not considered too important a factor, so be prepared to cast your net nationally. It's tempting to compare yourself to the schools in the local area you are familiar with, but unless they share the key characteristics we've noted, then they won't be a particularly valid comparison. However, it is worth noting that London weighting is a factor, so schools in London may run into trouble comparing themselves with ones outside of London, and vice versa. VMFI has slightly different comparison. The following logic is used for both comparator groups. Firstly, the school is matched to the 60 schools that are the most statistically similar. Then, of those 60 schools, any in your region are automatically selected. VMFI then takes the most statistically similar schools from the rest of the group, and they are then used to give a maximum of 30 schools. This approach has been chosen to reflect user feedback. The locality is an important factor in creating effective comparisons. There are some considerations which need to be made when comparing secondary schools to ensure that you do have a valid comparison. If you do have a sixth form, you need to make sure that you are comparing against other secondaries that have a sixth form and vice versa. This information can be found via the details section on the school's financial benchmarking website. Any schools which are not suitable comparators can be moved from your benchmarking basket. Moreover, the curriculum in secondary schools can be broad, and it's worth ensuring that you are comparing against schools which have a similar curriculum, as much as that is possible. Curriculum information can be found on the school's website, and if you are still unsure, you could also contact those comparator schools directly. Site sizes can also vary quite significantly, and it may be harder to benchmark premises-related costs on the school's financial benchmarking website. Therefore, I advise using VMFI or View My Financial Insights to compare any premises-related costs, as this is done on a metre-squared basis. Last but not least, The leadership structure may also be different. I do recommend reviewing the comparator schools to ensure that you are comparing against similar schools, especially when you are looking at teacher costs in particular. The three main tools available to support school resource management include the school's financial benchmarking website, which now includes progress comparisons and the self-assessment dashboard, VMFI, or View My Financial Insights, and ICFP, or better known as Integrated Curriculum Financial Planning. We're going to have a look at all of these tools over the next section of the webinar. You may be wondering why we have both the benchmarking tools and VMFI. The benchmarking site is the DFE's public-facing tool, giving any user information relating to the spend of public money. The charts are simple and easy to use, and include a wide range of data relating to income, balances, and workforce. The site also hosts the self-assessment dashboard, giving a high-level overview of metrics that are underpinned by a RAG rating. Whereas VMFI sits behind a login, so it enables much more nuanced messaging to be given to the school. This enables the DFE to suggest areas to investigate, links to commercial advice, guidance and frameworks, and metrics relating to budget planning, and risks based on the submitted data. VMFI gives a layered overview, allowing a trust or local authority to see an overview of all the schools it is responsible for, and then drill down into the detail of those individual schools. It also provides functionality for schools to scenario plan or add data to produce a high-level ICFP plan, which is better placed behind a login rather than a public-facing site. Although they are two separate tools, they should be used together when looking at benchmarking and making decisions. Before we get into that though, it is always good to understand where the data comes from. This does depend if you are a maintained or an academy school. For maintained schools, the information released on the DFE's benchmarking website originates from the Consistent Financial Reporting (CFR) return, completed on your behalf by the local authority. The latest information published for maintained schools is 2021 to 2022. For academy schools, the information comes from the annual accounts return, which is completed in January. For academies, the latest information published is 2020 to 2021. We anticipate that the 2021 to 2022 data will be released during the spring term. It's not just financial data that we can benchmark, and there is also workforce information, such as full-time equivalents, senior leader percentage, and staff headcount. This information comes from the workforce census. In truth, there is a lot of data available for benchmarking, and there is a risk of having anomalies in your sample. Successful benchmarking does rely on schools coding income and expenditure consistently. To help with this, both the CFR and AAR provide detailed guidance on what should be included in each cell on the returns. So as long as local authorities and academies are following that guidance, it helps to produce comparable data. It's also worth saying that the returns include a range of validations that help iron out as many anomalies as possible before the data is submitted. Furthermore, the AAR is audited by the Trust's external auditor before submission. So this means the data the DFE gets is reliable and can be used for benchmarking purposes. In addition to this, the DFE have produced their own chart of accounts, which they are encouraging schools to use. Maintained schools, I'm afraid this does not apply to you currently. However, don't switch off, as this may be relevant to you as and when you do convert to an academy. The DFE Chart of Accounts is a recommended standard which automatically generates some of the statutory returns which an academy needs to complete, including the annual accounts return and the budget forecast return. As mentioned earlier, the annual accounts return feeds information into the various benchmarking tools. The benefits of adopting to the DFE's Chart of Accounts include direct entry into some of the DFE's statutory returns, which can save time. At present, by using the DFE's Chart of Accounts, around 80% of the work will be automated for you. If you have already adapted the DFE's Chart of Accounts and are not using the automation, your financial management supplier can support you with this. The Chart of Accounts also allow draft financial statements to be produced automatically, and this could potentially reduce expenditure on accountancy fees if you do use an external provider to produce financial statements for you. The DFE also hope that it reduces subjectivity across the academy sector and develops the reliability of benchmarking comparisons. Although it's not mandatory, the DFE are keen for schools to convert to their chart of accounts, and I'm seeing more and more of the academy trusts doing so. Further information on the DFE's chart of accounts can be found on the web link above. The webpage has useful links to webinars and dial-in sessions if you did require further information. There is also an email address available on this slide shown if you did have any queries. So we've briefly discussed the benchmarking tools available and also had a look at what makes a good comparator and where the data comes from. However, what are the overall aims and benefits of benchmarking? Overall, benchmarking can help schools plan and manage their budgets as part of its financial reporting and management. One of benchmarking's key aims is to identify areas for improvement. That is, areas that appear to be underperforming financially compared to similar schools. Ensuring these areas are properly investigated can help lead to the school securing maximum value for money. Once a report is created that identifies areas of investigation, and we'll be looking later at how best to do that, it will allow the school leaders to have a discussion around those areas. Ideally, this will lead to a culture where it is encouraged to raise questions and make changes and improvements to areas where the school is underperforming. This is one of the key areas for governors. It is their job to be a critical friend for the school, and by raising concerns and asking questions, they will be performing their duty. Although when benchmarking, we do tend to focus on the negatives, it is worth noting that benchmarking will also highlight areas where your school is performing well. This may be of particular value for a school within a multi-academy trust, as practices where a school is strong can then be shared across other schools in the group that may not be performing as well. As we will see, communication between schools is encouraged. So if your school is strong in an area, you may even have a lesser performing school get in touch with you to ask to pass on advice or tips in that area. So let's take a look at schools' financial benchmarking. The first resource to look at is the DFE Schools Financial Benchmarking website. As mentioned earlier, the information held on this webpage is already in the public domain, which means that everyone can navigate to the website and assess a school's performance. The first step is to search for a school. Schools can be searched by school name, unique reference number, local authority establishment code, location, or by local authority. Once you have found the school, you are presented with the school's dashboard. This was a new feature as at Spring 2022. This screen gives you some high-level information about the school, such as expenditure, income, in-year balance, and revenue reserves. There is also a red, amber, and green RAG rating graph below the highlights. This is very much an extract from the school's self-assessment dashboard, and a hyperlink is available to quickly navigate to that area of benchmarking. This graph rates a school's performance against similar schools for various expenditure heads. To see which characteristics are used, the View Characteristics Used hyperlink can be selected to see a breakdown. The graph does default to teaching staff. However, there are much more expenditure heads available, and these can be viewed by selecting the hyperlink. Below the more traditional benchmarking graphs are some further guidance to help schools improve their financial efficiency. Each of these resources can be navigated to by selecting each of the links. There is information on planning and managing a school workforce, advice and tools available for non-staffing costs, and guidance for governors. Furthermore, there are links available for the DFE's related services, including exploring education statistics, get information about schools, and further DFE statistics at the DFE. I recommend visiting these sites if you have statistics which need improving and you are not sure how to go about this. From the dashboard screen, the Details tab can be selected and basic information about the school can be found. I won't go through each of these details now, but it does include lots of information, including school type, school phase, and number of pupils. The Finance tab can be selected, and some basic graphs will appear that will look like the ones you can see on screen now. There are graphs for expenditure, income, and balances. This shows the historical context of the school's finances for the last 5 years, where data is available. Each graph can be expanded further by selecting the hyperlink by the bold text. Graphs can be shown as absolute total, per pupil, per teacher, percentage of expenditure, and percentage of income. When looking at these graphs, I recommend showing this value as spend per pupil to allow better comparisons. As a new update, the workforce graphs now have their own individual tab, where graphs can be shown for the school workforce. There are multiple graphs, including graphs for the whole school workforce, number of teachers, senior leadership, and teaching assistants. Each graph can be expanded by selecting the More About link. Graphs can be displayed as headcount per FTE, percentage of workforce, and pupils per staff role. As you can see, there is lots of data held for each individual school. However, to benchmark effectively, we need to compare against similar schools. To do this, we start by clicking Start a Comparison. There are 3 types of comparison options available on the benchmarking website. The benchmark comparison allows schools to carry out a quick comparison to similar schools using pre-selected criteria, or schools can choose their own criteria. A school may place greater emphasis on one characteristic and would like to highlight that particular area. Schools also have the option of doing a manual comparison by inputting a name or location. The second comparison tool on the benchmarking website is that of progress comparison. This enables schools to examine their spending in relation to progress, or compare yourself against schools with higher achieving schools. It is currently available for only primary and secondary schools. The third option is the self-assessment dashboard. We will have a look at putting together a benchmarking report towards the end of the session. We are now going to have a look at our second benchmarking tool, VMFI, View My Financial Insights. To access VMFI, schools either require an IDAMS account or a DFE sign-in account. IDAMS accounts offer staff within local authorities or working at Academy Trust level. DFE sign-in accounts offer staff working in individual maintained schools or academies. Once you have an account, you also need to ensure you have the relevant role. These can be requested under the View Your Education data service. Once requested, an approver, which will be someone within your school, probably within an admin role, will need to approve the request. In DFE Sign-In, if they are already linked to their organisation, they can find out who their approver is at the location shown in the screenshot. Now that you have an account to log in, users need to navigate to the View Your Education Data service site and sign in using the IDAMS account or DFE sign-in. View My Financial Insights, or VMFI, provides users with insights into their financial position and performance of the schools within their Academy Trust or local authority, as well as providing an aggregated trust or local authority level view. It aims to identify areas to investigate, the scale of the issue, and potential ways to help address the issue by providing links to frameworks, contracts, and guidance for the cost category being investigated. The data source for VMFI is the same as the more traditional benchmarking. This is the annual account return for academy trusts, or the consistent financial reporting return for local authority schools. In those returns, expenditure is split into around 35 different headings. The DFE have taken those headings and put them into 9 different cost categories. 8 of those contain data which we believe is comparable between schools. And the 9th one, Other, contains any spend which is not comparable. For each of the 9 cost categories, the DFE looked at what is driving the costs. For example, for teaching and teaching support costs, driver of those costs is pretty well related to the number of pupils in your school, and the proportion of those pupils on free school meals and with low-lying educational needs. But there are 2 cost categories, premises and utilities, where building characteristics such as gross internal floor area or age of buildings is a better driver of those costs. The DFE have therefore put each school into 2 comparator groups within the tool. One with most similar schools based on pupil characteristics, and one with most closely related schools based on gross internal floor space and age of buildings. A school's chosen comparators can be found in the Comparator Schools section in the School View area. This screen provides key statistics for your school. However, if a comparator school is chosen, the key statistics will be listed side by side for both schools. When you land on the home page of VMFI, under School View, 2 priority areas for investigation are listed. This is where the data is the greatest outlier for each cost category when compared to the relevant comparator group. In this example, the first being the cost of IT. The Compare Your Costs tab can be used to drill down further. Alternatively, all cost categories can be viewed in View Cost Overview. The teaching and teaching support staff further details the high spend identified on the front screen. Results can be presented per pupil, as actuals, percentage of expenditure, or percentage of income. The lower graphs provide a more detailed breakdown of costs, putting your school's data side by side with your comparators. If your school's spend is high compared to the median, then you may see a link appear with a link to consider recommendations to reduce costs. This will link out to a set of tailored recommendations. This link is data-driven, so will only be visible if relevant based on your school's data. Following the Commercial Recommendations link will take you to the relevant frameworks, guidance, and resources that are on offer from the DFE in that particular spend category. An example for the Utilities cost category is shown on the left-hand side. Clicking the links will bring you to the Commercial Resources page at the relevant point, but you can also access this area of VMFI at any point through the Commercial Resources link at the top of the page to see what the DFE's commercial department have highlighted in each area. Comparator schools can be found in School View, View Your Comparator Schools. This screen displays some of the key characteristics of your school and allows you to select a comparator from either comparator groups and see the characteristics side by side by choosing Select School below and go to Comparator Profile. The two key comparators are on Building Characteristics, School Phase and Type, Region, Boarding or non-boarding type, Gross internal floor area, Average age of buildings, and whether it's a PFI school, and pupil characteristics, School phase or type, Region, Boarding or non-boarding, Number of pupils, Percentage of pupils eligible for free school meals, and percentage of SEM pupils or proportion of various SEM provisions for special school. Red, amber, green ratings can be found in the Trust/LA view for areas for investigation. The number of red, amber, and green rating is summarised in the grey areas at the top. This is very useful for multi-academy trusts and local authority level, as it will summarise by cost category. If the breakdown by school toggle is selected, each school can be identified and drilled down into separately. You can also filter the screen in a number of ways. For example, selecting various school phases in the School Phase/Type drop-down filter. This will flow through to all the graphs and tables on this page. The Local Authority Cost Overview in the Trust/Local Authority view provides a helpful oversight for MATs and local authorities. Once the RAG status compared to similar schools toggle has been turned on, the RAG ratings for each cost area can be seen for all schools within the trust or local authority. In order to produce this ratings, schools have been compared to their unique comparator groups and are not compared to each other. The idea behind each cost area having its own separate graph is to give a snapshot across the trust or local authority. This will identify any common issues or themes. The tabs along the top of the screen enable you to present the graphs in a number of different ways, including a per pupil or metre squared basis, actuals, percentage of expenditure, or percentage of income. The historical toggle can be used to see up to 3 years of historical data on the graphs. The link under each graph takes the user to a more detailed breakdown of the cost category. The remaining tabs along the top of the screen provide a number of options and benefits. The Select Comparators tab enables you to create or amend your own comparators. For example, if you want to compare yourself with a group of local schools. Data modelling can be used to edit your data to model different outcomes and carry out scenario planning. Changes made in this area are saved locally against your account, so won't be seen by anyone else. There is also an option for integrated curriculum financial planning. ICFP will be covered in much more detail in the How to Integrate Curriculum and Financial Planning webinar. However, to give a brief introduction, ICFP is a management process that helps schools plan the best curriculum for their pupils with the funding they have available. ICFP involves measuring your current curriculum, staffing structure, and finances, and using all the data to create a 3 to 5 year plan. At the end of the process, you should have a range of curriculum metrics, which can then be benchmarked against other similar schools. An example of a few are displayed on the slide above. Benchmarking, VMFI, and ICFP should not be used as standalone tools. They should be used in conjunction with each other and using all of the results to inform those strategic decisions. As part of the resource pack, a useful document is available which demonstrates how to calculate some of these metrics. However, if you are completely new to ICFP, I do recommend booking onto the How to Integrate Curriculum and Financial Planning webinar I mentioned earlier. We've now had a look at benchmarking, View My Financial Insights, and briefly mentioned ICFP. But what do we do now with all this data? After collecting the data from the various sites, we now need to analyse it. By analysing the data, we will look at the reasons for the results and detail in the benchmarking report whether or not the school is performing well or not so well when compared to other similar schools. We then need to detail what steps the school can take to improve performance if required. If you are stuck for ideas, don't forget there are plenty of commercial resources available, including frameworks available as part of the View My Financial Insights website, and I recommend starting there. After that, don't forget you can always contact other schools and see what they are doing. Collaboration is a great way to share ideas, and a comparator school may even share what they are doing in a specific area, which can then be replicated at your school to improve performance. Finally, as with any report, it is always good to report on the actions and detail the benefits of doing so. Producing a benchmarking report is the final piece of the puzzle, and we are going to have a look at this next. There may be lots of reasons for why a school may be performing well or not so well in certain areas, and each of the reasons will be personal to each individual school. Benchmarking is about collecting these results, discussing them, and implementing a strategic plan to correct these if necessary. A benchmarking report should include data from all the DFE's benchmarking resources and contain commentary on the performance of the school. For example, where is the school performing well when compared to similar schools? And where is the school not performing so well? The report should also contain steps which the school can take to bring their metrics down or up to an acceptable level. Furthermore, it's worth saying that even if your data is showing as an outlier, there may be perfectly good reasons for that, and they can also be detailed in the report. Benchmarking successfully is more about having discussions around each of the areas and seeing if those changes can improve efficiencies at the school. Finally, benchmarking doesn't just have to be an annual task. Benchmarking can be done at any point to see what similar schools are paying for goods and services. As a specific example, a small primary school I was working with was looking at their catering expenditure. We were able to benchmark against similar schools to see what their catering expenditure was, and from that, we had a rough idea of what to budget and had a figure in mind when speaking to potential suppliers. The resource pack does contain a best practice benchmarking report, and I recommend using this as a template for your own benchmarking report. That concludes our webinar today. We'll just revisit our learning outcomes, and we can see we have had a refresher of benchmarking and had a walkthrough of the site, which showed the different options the site provides. We've also looked at the DFE's VMFI site and the benefits that can provide to individual schools and also trusts and local authorities. Finally, we looked at how and what to include in a benchmarking report. I would just like to remind you that you can book onto the other school resource management webinars via the website that is currently shown on this slide. To book your place on a course, please visit www.schoolresourcemanagement.co.uk. We have produced a resource pack that will go alongside this webinar, which is available on the website on screen now. Should you have any questions following the webinar, please email educationspace@entrust-ed.co.uk or use the Ask the Expert feature on the website to send your questions to our experts. Thank you and goodbye.